It'll be under there. Get in the cracks and crevices. Don't worry about down in the river. Look where the flood stage lines are at, because that's where the better gold is going to be, especially in your benches. If you have issues, and this might be pushing it, but if you have issues getting rocks out of the way, like these huge boulders I see sitting on granite or any type of bedrock, and I see these guys with these winches and they're coming along trying to move that boulder out of the way. I did a video on a thing called the Sierra Blaster. It's legal in all states. You drill that rock and you blow it apart. Get it out of the way, get the gold underneath. I did a video on that. I know it sounds extreme, but it's legal, trust me. And that's what I used to do in the Army, so I can tell you it works. So, all right. Like I said, I'll answer all your questions after this. I already told you about the trench method. Okay, now when you're sampling, like say you go to Gold Basin or any of these places, go to Harbor Freight, get yourself an auger. It's a $200 auger. You're going to drill down until you can't drill down any farther. Then you're going to start sampling whatever comes out of that hole. Trust me, it's a lot easier to run an auger out there and start mapping what you're finding than it is to dig trenches all day. I tried it. It don't work too good unless you have a backhoe. So augers are $200, don't cost nothing. I already told you about gravel bars. Falcon MDs, if you haven't used one, they're great on localizing the mineralizations in these bedding planes of gravels. When you look at certain gravels, you're going to be able to tell the flood stages of each one of those bedding planes. And you're going to be able to see where the larger gravels accumulated. You can run your MD20 in there, and you're going to look for signals in there. Remember, it's going to sound off on iron and gold, so don't get confused. If you get a signal, don't say, oh, it's gold. No, it could be iron. And I know you've seen this, but when it sounds off going in, it's gold. It sounds off coming out, it's iron. It's an old trick, and if you've never worked one of these, you'll know what I'm talking about. Remember to chase the gold back to its source. Feeder streams. If you're working the Lynx Creek areas, this is a good example. People get in the middle of the Lynx Creek, it's dry. They start working and they find little pieces of gold. They don't realize that the gold is coming from these small tributaries that are feeding Lynx Creek. That's the source. You're going to go up there and you're going to look for any type of shale or anything that's protruding out and that's going to trap the gold like a natural riffle. That's where you're going to find most of your gold is in these tributaries up on the side of Lynx Creek. And remember, like I told you, here's a good example. A lot of times you have multiple pay layers in there. And if you get White's GMT, it has a function in there called follow the black sands. All it does is hit on black sands. Why is that important? Because you're going to go in there and you're going to stake it out with flags, and then you're going to dry wash it. It's going to be flood gold. It'll be fine. But in some instances, like in the Ivanpah mountain range, the gold can be really, really abundant. Super fine, anywhere from 50 to a minus 100 mesh. But there's a lot of it in there. And I hope you guys are remembering these locations, because these are real locations. All right. Now, I know that a lot of you guys probably are not going to do hard rock sampling. Hard rock sampling is where you're looking for the primary deposits or low deposits. It's a whole different ballgame than placer gold. When you get into low deposits, the game changes. Your sampling techniques change. You're going to be doing drilling into the vein structures, the gang material. You're going to be into the wall rock for checking for different types of alterations. When you go to sample, you're going to see the vein structure. You're going to go from hanging wall to footwall, straight across. And you're going to sample that way. You're going to take the material, you're going to crush it into a cobra crusher or one of these hand crushers. I like the cobra crusher. I know the inventor personally. It's a good unit, but if you get one, ask him if he can modify it to the gas version, because the electric one burns out too fast. You just can't keep enough lithium batteries to keep it going. He makes a chainsaw version. I know it sounds drastic, but it does work. The mortar and pestle, after about 10 minutes of that, you're going to give up. I guarantee it. I don't like using that darn thing. It jars your back like nobody's business. Now, mine dumps. Remember, mine dumps, tailing piles, two different things. When you're sampling mine dumps, what are you going to do? Think of it as an onion. When they're dumping all that material out, it's creating like layers of an onion as they're going out. Sometimes they'll build trestles to get that material away, and sometimes they just dump it on the ground. What you're going to do is, if you want to sample some of these areas, first thing you do is what? Look at the portal. The portal is the little opening that you see in all the mines. Shafts have collars, and adits usually have a portal. They're going to hand stack some of their low grade off to the side, sometimes high grade, depending on how small that mine is. You're going to go there and you're going to see the rock, and you've already done your research, so you're going to say, hey, you know what? I know these guys are chasing gold and limonite, and there's a stack of it here next to the portal. So I'm going to take a bunch of this stuff home and sample it. And if there's gold in it, make sure it's on open land. If it's not on open land, it's your discretion. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But that gold's been sitting there for about 100 plus years. Why is it sitting there? Because the smaller mines had to get their material to the mill either in wagon or by mule. The larger mines had ore bins out front that would hold the material until something came by, like a wagon, or later in the 20s and 30s, trucks. So don't worry about the big ones unless the ore bins are still full. So you're going to focus on the little mines, and trust me, I found a lot of mines where they have the corrugated metal sitting out there and just piles and piles of their high grade just sitting there waiting to go to the mill. Never made it. Now remember, a lot of these mines still have gold in them because what? 2 world wars and Executive Order L208 put the kibosh on gold mining. Of course, we started making gold available in the 70s in the Nixon administration when we came off the gold standard completely. And that's a whole other story. But the gold mines still have gold in them because of that. Remember, World War I called all the men to duty. A lot of them were killed, never came back. World War II, Executive Order L208 was put into place saying only strategic metals are going to be mined. So stop gold mining. When the war was over, it was too expensive. They got their metals from other countries. It was cheaper. So they never reopened a lot of the mines. So that's why you're thinking, how come there's still gold in there? Now you know. All right. Panning. You got to learn how to work this pan. Like I said, if I got time, I'm going to show you how I pan. Everybody's got their own technique. It's like playing the guitar. Everybody's got their own way of doing it. But I think I've gotten pretty good at it over the years. And so if you want me to teach you how to do it, I've got a ½ ounce of gold, which is a button that we melted down from some of the Super Gene gold. And I got a little tiny nugget in here. And I got some heavies in here, which is going to make it really interesting to try to get through. That way you can test your skills. It's really important because, like I said, if you're going to sample, this is what you're going to be using all the time. Unless you step up to something like a high banker, or some guys even sample with dredges. But for the most part, you're going to go out in the well, this is what you're sampling. Of course, you'll have your classifier too. And you don't have to, but it's easier that way. Okay. Once again, this is mostly hard rock. Don't let it fool you. Grab samples, chip samples, high grading. It's just a way of finding out what's inside that mine. And now we're talking about load mining now. High grading, all you're doing is going in with your, like say, a BLF, like a Gold Bug 2 with a 6-inch coil. You're going to go in the mines and you're going to start looking around the edges of the stopes or in the working face where they're chasing these veins. You're going to go over and see if you get targets. A lot of times I've gotten targets and it's small pieces of gold locked up in the gangue material. Gangue is just a fancy word of saying the rock that the gold is traveling in. You're going to see that in your USGS reports. And like I said, you need to get used to that. Geochemical testing, you'll probably never get into that. You're going to use the plants and the tree leaves to find out if there's gold in it. They do this a lot in Australia. They'll actually burn those things and they'll assay that to find out if there's any gold in there. Now if you get rocks like these and you're like, you know what, Jeff, I don't know if there's gold in there. There's sulfides in there, but I don't know. What you can do is in the back of these ICMJ magazines, you're going to see a lot of people who are willing to assay your rock for 40 bucks. They'll crush it, they'll cut it, they'll split it, and they'll assay it for 40 bucks, which is not bad. They'll send you back a report to tell you what's in that rock to let you know if it's worth mining or not. You'll use the Land Matters site to find out if it's open and you can file a claim. Now, I've seen a lot of guys make money this way. What they'll do is they'll file a claim on open land. They'll get assay reports from 2 or sometimes 3 assayers. They'll take that information to a mining company. Here's my claim. Here's 3 reports. I'll sell it to you for $1 million. The choice is yours. They'll send their own crew out. They'll do core sampling. If you don't know what core sampling is, it looks like that. These are core samples from an actual mine. This has got gold in it, this doesn't. And then what they'll do is they'll run those drills in that are hollow, and they'll pull out these long cores. And then what they'll do is then they'll cut that core in half, and they'll send one to a lab and keep the other one on hand for verification. If they do in fact find gold, they'll offer you money for that claim, I guarantee it. I've seen a lot of guys make money that way, and they've done that in the old days as well. Okay. And try to remember that sampling is not just a one-day deal. Some claims that I've got, I spent 6 months sampling through the winter time because I needed to know exactly where the gold is traveling and the patterns. So we took augers out there and we drilled and drilled and drilled, and we got an actual map of where all the gold, and you can see a pattern forming. So now what we do, we wait till the following year, make sure we pay our $155 fee, and we go out there with dry washers and we work the heck out of that zone. And we walk away several ounces in a day, no problem. But it takes time. I mean, it's not that's a success story. Trust me, I've had a lot of stories that weren't successes, but I had to get out there and pound the ground. All right. Now, this is the Sierra Blaster I was telling you about. It is, I know the manufacturer personally. You don't have to have a federal explosive license to operate it, like you would if you're getting det cord, dynamite, packaged emulsions, things like that. This one is completely safe. You can buy it. You can use as many charges as you want. It works on compression. It's basically a double base smokeless powder. Double bases only work, which is nitrocellulose and nitroglycerin. That's what's inside your pistols. They're double base powders. Under compression, it'll explode just like nitroglycerin, but if it doesn't have compression, it's just going to fizzle. And that's how they get around the law with the ATF. So look into the Sierra Blaster. I guarantee you'll like it. And I got videos on that too. All right. Be persistent. This all comes under the heading of psychological. If you go out there and you think that you're not going to find gold, you're not going to find gold. Guarantee it. If you have a negative attitude, you're not going to find gold. If you've been swinging and swinging and you haven't found nothing and you think, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. You're wasting your time. You're not going to find gold. You have to keep a positive attitude. I guarantee you, I've seen guys who walked over and found gold where people have gone before because they had lousy attitudes and they thought there's no gold there. I'm telling you, and I don't know how that attracts like, something to that effect. They did find it. Have a plan. Make sure that you just don't hop in your vehicle and start driving in the Mojave. You're going to die out there. Make sure it's the right time of year. Make sure you've got your whole list set up. Make sure you've got your little sample bags. Everything ready. All right. Geology 101. Now, I was contemplating whether or not I wanted to go over this with you guys because some of it can get complicated, as you can see. And I think there's some books out there that you could probably read that would do better than what I could do. But just remember that the basics is this. You have 3 types of rocks in this world. Igneous, which is made by fire, which is usually like your granites, your granodiorites, things of this nature. Metamorphics. Anytime a rock has undergone any type of structural change due to heat, it is considered, or pressure, is considered a metamorphic rock. A lot of your mesothermal deposits in California are metamorphic in nature. Shear zone hosted deposits, lateral secretion deposits, things of this nature are metamorphic. Sedimentary. This is usually your sands, your layers, you see your bedding plains. These are really obvious to spot. I found more gold in metamorphic rock than I have in anything else. Why? Because the way that metamorphics are created. Now, don't get me wrong, igneous rock does produce a lot of gold, especially intrusion-related deposits. You'll find a lot of nice gold where you have these huge plutons that are pushing up through this limestone. It's basement rock. And this is a list of all the different types of rocks here. I'm not going to get into it, but remember, like in your igneuses, you've got mafic, you've got ultra, mafic, intermediate, felsic. This is just going to give you an idea. So when you look at a rock, you can say, okay, I know it fits into these 3 categories, and I know it's like this. But if you do your research, and you carry one of these little, what's that rock or mineral called? You can sit there and quickly look at it and go, oh, this is nice, because that's nice. No, there's actually a rock called gneiss, and all it is granite that's been squeezed or heated, and it becomes metamorphic, so it becomes gneiss. It's spelled with a G. And then if it's twisted and pushed around, it's called migmatite. I know, and these words are not really important. What you need to do is find out what rocks are hosting the gold in the districts that you're going to. You don't need to get a degree like I got just to go out there and say, well, that's granodiorite. Well, that's great, but where's the gold at? Can you tell me that? No. So, what do you say about that, Mr. Wizard? So, This is metamorphic rocks, once again, foliated, non-foliated. I'm not going to get into that too much. Most of your metamorphics are foliated, except for two, quartzite and marble, which are made from sandstone and limestone. It goes through a chain, and there's another thing you're going to look up if you really want to get into this, and it just keeps going on forever. It's called Bowen's reaction series. You're going to look that up, and it's going to tell you how some of these rocks in magma chambers can either pop out through a volcanic vent as basalt, which is black, or rhyolite, which is white. They both come from a magma chamber, but Bowen's reaction series determines what it's going to pop out as. So that's interesting because you're going to find gold deposits, a lot of gold deposits around volcanic activity. Because remember, there's a subduction zone going underneath California, and it's creating all these volcanic zones out here, not far from where you're sitting. And volcanoes, I should say the vents, are actually good indicators that there's huge plutons under your feet generating the heat that's necessary to create the hydrothermal solutions to create the deposits. One last thing, and I'll move on because this is getting complex. Gold travels in two different forms when it's in load. Sulfur complex, chlorine complex. Sulfur complex, that's your pyrites. Chlorine complex, that's like your olivines and serpentines and things of this nature. If you're in California, you're going to know about serpentine, you're going to know about the special green-hosted rocks. They call it the arcane greenstone belts, especially up in Canada. I know, it's a lot of material, huh? All right. Remember, two other types of deposits. Mesothermal, epithermal. This is lode still. And why am I harping on lode so much? Because I found more gold playing with lode than I ever have with placer. Placer fields have been worked to death, unless you find those old river channels that I talked about. Now, if you go up by Lake Tahoe, I shouldn't tell you this, but if you go up by Lake Tahoe, and you go just to the west and north of Lake Tahoe, there are a lot of old mines there, old river channel mines. And what the old timers figured out was that the gold, the rivers that contain the gold from the tertiary period from 50 million years ago, is covered over by a whole bunch of volcanic material. Usually the first thing that comes out is going to be pyroclastic flows. Then you're going to get ash flow tuffs. And then on top of that, you're going to get basalt. So you have this layering going on. And so what they did is they drilled and blasted it until they popped up and started coming through this material, and then they tapped into these old channels. They were, and I know where these are at, they were getting 1 ounce of gold for 5 wheelbarrows of dirt. That's unbelievable, and that's average. That's average. So, and these mines, right now, nobody knows about because the owners have died and the claims have gone back to BLM. And some people have found them, and they didn't know what they were looking at. They got a hold of me, and I told them, those are old drift mines, buddy. You need to start sampling when you get back there. So they did, and they found gold, and then one of the guys who actually saw the video got a hold of me and said, that's one of my mines, and I'll take you up there, and I'll tell you what the deposit was and how much they found. They worked it all the way up to the 70s. The trommel's still out there. It's on a patent claim. Now, you got to be careful with patent. Remember, you got patent and unpatent. Remember that. And thanks to the Clinton administration, we don't have patent anymore. We only have unpatent, which means you just have mineral rights. You can't build a house. You can't own the property. You can just go there. Anybody else can walk on it, which is a pain because you don't know if they're claim jumping. You go to your claim and you're like, what are you doing? Well, legally I can walk here, but I don't know what you're doing, do I? So that's what that's for. So, all right. Now, this is a real quick depiction of supergene process. Out of Good Springs, they have supergene deposits, very rich. The gold is traveling in this stuff. There's not a single speck of quartz in it. This is jarosite, plumble jarosite, and limonite. Now, what did I tell you about limonite? This is an oxidized state of pyrite. All the sulfur has oxidized out as sulfur dioxide, and if you look close enough, you'll see little cubes, empty square cubes that are in there. So those are called boxworks. And what has happened is all the sulfur is gone, leaving the iron and the gold. Because remember, pyrite is what? Sulfur and iron combined. And sulfur and gold travels in what? A sulfur complex or a chlorine complex. So you find this stuff right above the water table. It's hard to find because the water tables go up and down over the years. Where the water table is, right above that, you're going to find wire gold. Wire gold does grow. I've seen it. People don't believe me, but gold does grow. And I'm going to explain something about bacteria gold here in a minute. Right below that, you're gonna have reduction zones, which is basically your base metals and sulfides. So you'll know that because you'll start seeing tons of pyrite. And speaking of pyrite, oh, I get this one a lot. If you get pyrites, chalcopyrites, arsenopyrites, don't roast them, please. I've seen so many people try to roast arsenopyrite, not knowing that that's arsenic that makes up the composition. You're going to kill yourself. Well, they're like, well, there's 2 ounces of gold per ton in there. I got to have that gold. Not if you're 6 feet under, son. So don't roast. A lot of people try to roast those sulfides to get the gold. Let Mother Nature do it. Don't do it. There's ways of doing it, but if you can't tell the difference between standard pyrites or arsenopyrites, one is a silvery color, one is a brass color. One smells like almonds and one smells like sulfur. That's the way you can kind of distinguish it. But just don't roast at all unless you know what you're doing. Remember that the gold prices in a lot of the USGS reports were what? From when they wrote that USGS report back in the 30s. Remember, gold prices changed in 33 from $20 an ounce, which it was forever and a day, to $35 an ounce, thanks to the administration. And I won't get into that. So just remember the gold prices, when you're looking at it, they said, oh, they only pulled out $20 per ton. That's nothing. $20 a ton before 33 was 1 ounce per ton. That's pretty good. That's pretty good numbers. If you're going to mine this stuff, once again, hard rock, because that's where I found most of my gold, you're going to want to get a mine that has at least 1 ounce per ton. If you get anything below that, it's not worth your time. Trust me, unless you plan on selling it to a big mining company like Barrick Gold Mining or something like that. So remember, at least 1 ounce per ton. You know what that says? All right. Now I'm going to go over this real quick. I don't know how much time I got.
Actually, we're running a little bit late.
Oh.
Kind of wrap it up a little bit, and then we can do a demonstration kind of while we're doing.
Yeah, I can do a demonstration, and I can go over this some other time. These just talk about epithermals, and this gets more complicated as far as diatreme and brecciated zones on where the gold's going to be. But I'll go over that some other day.
Oh, I thought maybe we'll put that one up there.
It's up to you guys. I mean, I can talk all night.
Okay.
Yeah. People get tired of hearing me talk. I want to Slim to talk too.
Okay, I think what we'll do the raffle, the drawings, stuff like that while we do the demonstration.